particular emerging leaders, emerging leaders that you may be in a management position or soon be in a management position. As you elevate up an organization frequently, it becomes much more challenging to receive feedback, and people, even though you may seem approachable, they may not be as willing to provide or as readily provide feedback as when you're more junior in your career. Lack of skill. Hopefully we'll address a couple of elements here today that will enable people to have a bit more skill. And then here, like the dog in the fire here, it may seem easier to just let things ride and hope that things will fix themselves. And this also leads to a lot of delayed feedback or no feedback, is that we just hope that things fix themselves. All right, so we'll talk about a few frameworks for success, both from my experience and some just general industry models for giving and receiving feedback. We'll start with giving feedback. All right, so question to the group. What do you think is the right ratio of positive feedback to negative feedback in a relationship? If you were to guess, there's been some studies on this. What in your experience is a good ratio?
I'd say 4 to 1. 4 positive to 1 negative.
Yeah, that is like right on the money, Mark. So 3 to 5 is really a good range. 5 is great for your spouse, and higher if you can do that, because the way to think about this is one kind of model to think about this is an emotional bank account that you have with a person. So think about the positive feedback that you're giving to somebody as, that is a deposit you're putting in the piggy bank of, that relationship, the emotions that you have. And then the more constructive feedback or criticisms, that is taking some money out. Okay, and so you never want to have anywhere close to a zero balance or a negative balance, because if you do, bad things will happen. You want to have a abundance of wealth in that emotional bank account with the people that you're giving feedback to and receiving feedback from, and having that emotional bank account be healthy makes everything go much more smoothly. So this is something that I, in particular, am challenged with, is that I don't often give as much positive feedback as I should, and then that leaves me depleted when I need to give more constructive feedback. And this is just kind of, I think my nature is that I think that people understand that I appreciate them and that they're doing a good job. And maybe if I'm not saying anything negative, then they should presume that they're doing a good job. Well, that's not sufficient. And so this is something I personally have trying to work on in my own style, is being really intentional about the positive feedback. And some people need to think about it more than others. Some people, it might be natural to give the positive feedback. So trust, huge prerequisite. Do they trust that you have their best interest at heart? That when you have some more constructive feedback to give them, it is more of a nature to develop and grow them rather than to be punitive or to try to enhance your own career. I think if people understand where you're coming from, and that is from a place of caring and nurturing and development, that it will be received much better. And some people may have things that stress them out in particular that you may need to be aware of, the particular individual that you're speaking to, and how you talk to them should differ based on the elements of their personality that that you're aware of. And the headline here is that people like getting feedback from others that they view as trustworthy and who care about them. So I would view that kind of as prerequisites to being effective at giving feedback, is establishing that those relationships, the trust, getting that emotional bank account really healthy shape, and then everything else will be a lot easier. All right, so giving feedback, when to give feedback? Often. Again, it's hard to get a positive emotional bank account if you're not giving positive feedback often. And so make it a habit. And practice makes perfect. The more reps that you get in, the more comfortable you'll feel with feedback, the better it will become less awkward over time. And then people will also start to expect feedback from you. And they won't overthink it when they get it from you. So if you're the type of person that you only give feedback very rarely, then people really make note of those couple of things that you say to give feedback to them. And they may really take it harder if you're not providing feedback consistently. Another thing about the when is real-time feedback is often the most useful. So as soon, say you observe a behavior that needs some modification, having that conversation with the person soon after you observe that behavior is really helpful, because you can get into specifics. Specifics are really helpful in feedback because you can link it to that situation, talk about the specific behavior instead of just a vague generality later on. Like say it's an annual performance review, you're thinking back 9 months ago, what was the behavior, and you just talk about it at a higher level. It's much less impactful. One-on-ones, so if you can't grab somebody soon after you observe a behavior, or either good or bad, and want to talk about it, one-on-ones are a great forum for me personally to provide feedback. And so sometimes I might save up some feedback and have the good setting where one-on-one should be an expected forum for us to give and take feedback. And so it's kind of a safe space for us all to expect feedback. And then also a point on the when, and this is something I have failed with in the past myself, is if a direct report is surprised by feedback in a performance review. Here at Automation NTH, we do performance reviews once a year for new folks early in the career. They have a 6-month check-in. That's a little bit less formal. But if I am giving direct report feedback in this performance review, and they say, whoa, this is a big surprise, wasn't expecting this, never heard this before, that's shame on me for not doing my job and providing them feedback earlier. So that's really important. Okay, how to give feedback. So this may be obvious, but it's worth noting anyways, that feedback is often best live and face-to-face. So the alternative here is sometimes feedback happens in writing, but feedback in writing is fraught with difficulties because there's no easy back and forth dialogue. Tone can be easily misinterpreted. Care and trust are hard to come through in writing. So if it's anything substantial in feedback, try to do it live and face-to-face, or if you're not physically in person, over Zoom with video on, so that you can digest each other's reactions and emotions and all that. Okay, focus on behavior rather than person. So we'll talk about SBI model here in a minute and how we can speak to behavior, but the less personal that you can make it, and it's just observing a behavior, it doesn't, and I'm providing feedback on that behavior, this doesn't necessarily reflect on a judgment on you as a person or what I think about you as a person. That has a way of being received much more readily if you're talking about behavior, and it's less linked to beating me up in my sense of self. It's more a behavior that I had rather than you're beating me up personally. Preparing the message. So especially if it's something significant that maybe you're putting off because it might be uncomfortable, you know, the feedback might upset them. It really helps to prepare your message and think about it ahead of time. So there's an SBI model that we'll talk about in coming slides here that I think is helpful. Specificity, talked about that earlier. You know, sometimes things can devolve into arguments or defensiveness if you're not helpful, or if you keep things too high level, or something more connected to them as a person rather than a specific behavior or circumstance. So this third bullet point may be controversial, I don't know, but from my own personal experience, a watch out is sandwiching negative feedback inside positive feedback. So this is particularly a challenge for me earlier on in my career giving feedback, where I feel a bit awkward about, I know I need to tell something constructive to somebody on my team, and I'm kind of dipping my toe into it. I don't really want to hurt their feelings. And so I am going to say something really positive about them, how great they are. I'm going to dip my toe in with this negative comment about some behavior that needs modification. And I'm going to go quickly back out and reinforce how great they are. And so the challenge there, and that I've been burned by, is if you too quickly go from positive, negative, positive, that they may get confused and may not sufficiently spend time absorbing or understanding that you have something constructive to share with them. And I think I've seen some other newer managers sometimes struggle with this, is that you need to have sufficient time so that they understand exactly what it is that you're trying to modify about behavior. I'm curious, anybody else had this type of situation or maybe approach in the past? This is probably something that is pretty common out there. No? Okay, maybe I'm alone.
I cannot think of a specific example, but I know surely what you mean, that you want to be careful, but then by being too careful, the message gets lost in a positive sandwich.
Yes, the message gets lost. That's the thing to. Yeah. So it's a fine line to walk here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another suggestion here is be curious. So we observe behavior, and maybe it's behavior that we want to reinforce positively and say, hey, you did great here. Or if it's a behavior that needs modification, try to be curious and understand why people are doing what they do. And maybe it's something that, as you dive into it, helps you understand and coach them up and provide better feedback for future. And so maybe trying to not just cast judgment at first, but understand maybe is there a reason that they did that you didn't think about. So try to be curious about understanding their behavior. The last point here, of course, should be obvious, but is sometimes difficult in practice, is listen. Sometimes we miss important context about the person or situation that would impact our feedback if we knew about it. So I know as a recipient of feedback, the times where I've been most frustrated by feedback I've gotten is I feel like they didn't know the situation that I was in, or a bunch of other circumstances that led to my behavior, which I was getting feedback on. And I was not given the appropriate opportunity to share what those circumstances are, to give them a full picture. So that's really frustrating on the receiving end. And then as people giving feedback, we need to make sure that we allow the time and space for them to provide their 2 cents. Something that I personally like to do when providing constructive feedback is, after I share that with them, and ask them whether they understand it, and if I ask, do they think that's fair or not? You know, is there anything else that I need to know, or am I way off base in my assessment? All right, SBI model. Don't know how widespread this is, but I think this is a good framework for providing feedback. So it's, just to maybe provide a quick synopsis of it. So it's helpful to have any type of framework to deliver feedback so that you can kind of prepare that message. And this can help focus your comments on specific situations, behaviors, and then outline the impact those behaviors have on others. And so when you have a structure to your feedback, people understand precisely what you're commenting on and why. And you give them a chance to reflect on their actions, the impact of their actions, and what they need to change. And it sometimes helps the giver of feedback avoid making assumptions that could upset the other person and damage your relationship with them. So SBI can be helpful for positive feedback as well as negative feedback. So the example here, you might just want to give somebody a quick pat on the back. Great job with your status updates. Well, another way to take that to the next level is put in an SBI framework. So the example here is, over the past 3 weeks, your status updates have been great. You've clearly summarized your key accomplishments and appropriate level of detail. These consistent status updates help the client see the true value that we're providing and help her plan her supporting activities accordingly. That is the verbalization of the impact that those actions have, helps reinforce the positive behavior, and which will make the person feel even better than that first sentence of great job with your status updates. It connects them with the impact, the results, and consequences in a greater way. On criticism, so here's an example. You can be difficult to contact sometimes. Okay, that's something that we sometimes encounter with colleagues. Another way to reframe this in SBI is, last Friday, when the team was working toward a critical deadline, you took a vacation day without letting anyone know in advance. We're expecting your help, and we're unable to meet the client's expectations as a result of your absence. So that is specific. In this case, it presumably is timely, and then it shares the impact. And it talks about their behavior. Doesn't necessarily say that, hey, you're a tardy person, you like, or make it personal. It's talking about the behavior. All right, so giving feedback, just a summary: make feedback a habit, create an environment of positive feedback. Action item for everybody on this call: provide feedback to one person a day. Okay, positive, negative, doesn't matter. Just do it, make it a habit. All right, receiving feedback. So the way I like to think about this is that everybody should have a Lowe's attitude. Okay, so Lowe's has the tagline, never stop improving. They get this, they have this tagline to get you to buy more stuff for your house. I think of this as a way to prepare myself for something that I don't naturally enjoy, which is receiving feedback, but I know I need in order to keep improving. And I have to have the Lowe's attitude in order to force myself to be a good receiver of feedback. The other thing that helps me personally is recognizing that everyone, absolutely everyone, no matter what level of performance, has opportunity for improvement. Okay, so the natural instinct for me, probably for many others, is to take feedback personally, that it means something about me, that I am not sufficient, or I'm deficient in some way. But in reality, everybody has room for improvement. Everybody should be getting feedback. Everybody should never stop improving. For people who care about their careers and career development and growing, and I think this group, if you're here, you care about this, and you're an emerging leader and you want to keep growing in your career, all else equal, of course, nothing's ever equal among people, but all else equal, people who actively solicit and receive feedback will outperform those who don't. Okay, so if you want to keep growing, you need to make a point of receiving feedback consistently. This can be a challenge, especially like I mentioned before, as you grow in your career. And so you need to be a bit more intentional about receiving feedback. So you have to make it easy to the people that you work with. Do they prefer to think about feedback and write down? Do they prefer to verbalize? Do they prefer direct or indirect feedback? Think about the people that you want feedback from, make it easy for them to do so. Try to have them make it specific, or have your feedback requests be specific. So maybe it's something that you're working on specifically, like this presentation, for example. I am going to ask for feedback on this presentation, how we can do it better for next time. That is something specific that it's not super broad, just what can I be doing better? 360 feedback. This is something Christine on our team, who's on this call, is helping us with, where this is kind of a forced feedback mechanism where people up, down, all around provide feedback to you in a kind of a formal way. This can be really impactful. And so recommend that if you have an HR team or HR support, that is a great exercise to have them help you with. If you share your goals with people, say, hey, I'm working on my presentation skills. Can you provide me some feedback on something I could be doing better to make more effective presentations? And if I tell that to one of my colleagues, they'd be much more likely to be open and provide unvarnished, honest feedback if they know I am working on something. I have intent to improve. Something that I think is helpful is don't leave people an easy out, like that you're just checking the box. I'm asking for feedback. Like, do you have any feedback for me? Like, that is more, that is not very specific. And a way to make it a little bit more specific and not leave them a way out without providing you valuable feedback is, what's one thing I could do to improve giving a presentation, or one thing I could do to improve working on whatever task, so that they have to provide you with some type of response. Listen, don't argue. A sure way to not get feedback in the future is to argue with the person giving you the feedback. And then you're shooting yourselves in the foot because you're not going to get the feedback that you need to keep improving. Again, defensiveness, that's a natural instinct for most of us when receiving feedback. So just be on the watch out for that. Kind of prepare yourself as you're getting feedback, that kind of nip that in the bud when you can. Thank the feedback provider. Again, you want to reinforce the feedback culture. You need to make them feel good that they did the right thing to provide you this feedback. And a few other last slide before we kind of transition into breakout groups here on receiving feedback. So follow-up can be really helpful to reinforce the feedback culture. Okay, so especially maybe if you're in a management position, it can be, and you're trying to get feedback from more junior employees or your direct reports, it can be intimidating for them potentially to give you feedback, and they may hesitate to do so. And so you want that experience of them providing you feedback to be a positive one, and to know that it was worthwhile for them to take that risk, that relationship risk with you, to provide that feedback. And then if they feel comfortable about the results of that, and that it was worthwhile, then they're more likely to do so in the future. And then you're on your way to building a great feedback culture. So, when you get the feedback, decide what you want to do with it. Maybe sometimes you think it's way off base. Maybe you want to check in with a couple more resources, colleagues, before you decide if there's anything that you want to do about it. If there is something you want to do about it, set a goal, think about how to achieve that goal, and see if there's any way that you can, hold yourself accountable, or have somebody else help hold yourself accountable on the progress and how you're going to measure that progress. This last point, it can be really powerful, and not all feedback circumstances warrant this, but maybe some of the bigger ones do, is closing the loop with the person who gave you the feedback. So if that person giving you feedback just really poured something off their chest, really made themselves vulnerable, and took a risk sharing something with you, and then you listen and nod your head, and then they don't hear anything about it forever, that is not maybe an ideal experience, because they don't know, what'd you do with that? Like, does that just go down into a black hole, or is that going to be meaningful any way to you? And so following up with the person who gave you the feedback, is if there is anything that you did with it, there are any results, or maybe sharing with them what you're working on and how you're addressing it. That is another helpful way to reinforce a positive feedback culture. Okay, so that is the extent of the receiving feedback portion. So we're going to transition here into small group discussion. And my colleague Justin here is going to take it away and help us get into breakout rooms. Personally, these presentations and me blabbing on are okay, but the most valuable parts of the sessions is a small group opportunity to connect with others and engage on this topic in a deeper way. So I really encourage everybody to stick around for the breakout, the sessions that Justin will coordinate now. So take it away, Justin.
All right, thanks, Greg. So we will ask, by the way, I'm Justin Hudgens, Director of Project Management here at Automation NTH, work with Greg. So glad all y'all could join. So we're going to go into these breakout groups. I would ask that if you're not going to be able to join a group, if you either after this, it's over after the wrap up, if you could go ahead and drop. That way, when I set the groups, no one ends up in a room by themselves. We'll probably do 2 or 3, probably 3. And then I'm gonna do my best to share the screen with all the questions and bullet points to review in the breakout. So I'll give everyone a minute to 30 seconds or so to drop if you're not going to be able to join, and then I'll form the rooms. We'll probably go about 10:37. We'll probably go about 17 minutes or so. I'll set a timer on it.
Yeah. And we will wrap this by 11. We're going to give ourselves 5 minutes to come back together as a full group and provide some key takeaways, and then also provide me feedback.
All right. All right, I'm gonna get this going here, and I'm gonna do my best to share my screen with the breakout groups. So here we go.
All right, so everybody should have a join request for a room. Looks like Sarah's by herself there, Justin.
All right, let's see if we can move to room 6.
You gotta move, Sarah.
I did.
Roger's here hanging out. Can we move Roger into a room?
Yep. Roger is part of room 4.
Roger, you might need to push something on your Zoom in order to join a room. You there, Roger? Okay, so are you sharing to the breakout rooms, the discussion questions?
I could not share it,
Okay.
but since your screen is shared, you may be able to do it. This should be just,
Share to breakout rooms.
there you go.
Got it.
Good job, man. Take a drink of water.
We're gonna copy paste questions in there. Do you want to pop into one? Maybe room 4 with Jeff.
Sure. I'll go in there.
I'll find one to join too.
Okay, Roger dropped.
Okay.
All right. See you.
See ya. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
So. With the
How'd
first
your-
one back. The older
Yeah,
one.
first one's back. How'd your discussion go? Were you having any time to get into anything?
Yeah, we got to cover a few of these topics. We didn't really have the PowerPoint right
Sorry
there.
about
at the
that.
beginning,
For most of
Oh,
the
no.
time, yeah.
Yeah,
But-
we
Yeah, it seems
Sarah,
that when we have, when we
use
joined
SBI
groups
as
ourselves, we lost
feedback
it.
about the PowerPoint.
Yeah, sorry.
all got to discuss the SBI structure and how it's worked for each of us, and I really liked going into detail about it and hearing everyone's personal experiences with it.
Was SBI familiar to anybody?
Well, I used STAR, STAR, situation, task, action, and results, which is actually the same.
Yeah. Any other takeaways, comment? I know that was a short period of time and maybe we didn't get fully into all the questions, but any other insights or takeaways or comments from small groups?
I like learning about the stuff you presented, correct? And I think I can incorporate it in myself giving and receiving feedback.
Good.
I've been more the type with a single line, and it's best to specify it a bit more.
Hey, Greg, Jeff here. I thought you did a great job presenting today. One of the things that we talked about in our little breakout session was understanding some of the obstacles you might face when trying to give feedback or receive feedback, you know, situations where maybe you're distracted, environmental situations, or maybe high stress, high emotion situations.
Ooh, yeah.
And maybe understanding that maybe now is not the time to give the feedback, let things kind of calm down. And so I do agree that being timely with it is important, but maybe understanding some of those factors where emotion can be high. Let's wait, let things calm down.
That,
We'll deal with it a little bit later.
that's a great point. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's if emotions are running high, you'll find another time probably to give them with feedback.
One thing, Jeff, about that I was relating in our small group was I have feedback I want to give, but I don't want to lose some momentum that the engineers got going right now and kind of trip them up. So keeping track of that, keeping notes of it, you know, both positive and negative, just to, you know, have something there. So when we do have our sit down, I don't have to try to remember what I was thinking about 2 weeks ago when I wanted to give the feedback. So, you know, making sure as a manager, I'm keeping track of those kind of things that I want to make sure I discuss so they don't slip away.
Yes, great.
All right, we have 2 minutes left here. Hopefully everybody had a good discussion there. But the task at hand is, what's one thing that we could do better to make this presentation and discussion improve for next time?
Maybe a bit
It's an
more time for the
opportunity to
group.
practice giving feedback here.
Say maybe ahead of time, send out the list of objectives for the breakout sessions. It would better optimize our breakout session times.
Yeah, even just 10 minutes before, just so they're kind of like pulled up during the meeting. Yeah. Would be good. Or even just more time to discuss, maybe just, you know, even 5 more minutes. I know that I've been in some groups before where it's a much larger, you know, there's many more of us, and today was pretty small, but which was great, and it was enough time, but I know to give it a bit more.
You think 3 in a group size is good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I thought it worked well. Yeah.
Greg, we had a situation that we were in one group with 2 of the people of the same company. Which was first of all was confusing because we were first only with 2 of us, and we were very late. Sarah came in the group, who was not from the Netherlands. Otherwise, we were able to talk in our own language. So it would be better to, I don't know,
Which we did.
which we did in the beginning, yeah.
Well, good. Well,
Yeah.
I really value the feedback that everybody has. I put my contact info there at the beginning. It's greg.young@automationnth.com. I know we're at an hour. Everybody has busy schedules, so I just want to wrap this up and say thank you for participating. Hope that you got something out of it and made a few connections here today. I encourage you to sign up and attend the CSIA Executive Conference in May if you haven't already. And if not, then join us in July, where we'll have another session, another topic, and another chance to connect with other emerging leaders. So thank you to everybody for participating and hope to see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Craig and all.
Thanks,
Okay.
Greg.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.